This is what silence sounds like. When a world has drowned 8 people, that's all that remained of humanity. 8 souls on a wooden boat, surrounded by the graves of everyone they'd ever known. Noah stared out at the endless water and whispered the question that haunted him.
Was there truly no other way?
But the flood didn't come without warning. It came after 120 years of mercy rejected. After angels abandoned heaven for forbidden love. After their children, the giants, devoured the earth. To understand why God unmade his world, we have to go back to where the corruption began, to a mountain called Hermon, which means cursed, to the night when heaven's watchers made a choice that would cost everything. The year was 3,500 years before Christ. The earth was young, and on the summit of Mount Hermon, a conspiracy was about to be born. Semjaza was a watcher of the 7th heaven. For millennia, he had observed humanity from above. But observation had become obsession. He had watched the daughters of men and found them beautiful, not as a distant appreciation, but as a consuming fire. And so Semjaza spoke to his brothers, confessing what burned within him.
I fear to do this thing alone. If I alone bear this sin, I alone will face the punishment.
But Semjaza was not alone in his desire. Azazel, keeper of forbidden knowledge, Barakijal, reader of the stars, Kokabel, warrior of the high places. One by one, they pledged themselves to the same forbidden path. And there, on that cursed summit, 200 angels of heaven bound themselves together with an oath. They knew what they were doing. They knew the cost. 200 angels, 200 oaths, 200 wings spreading against the dying light. Heaven's watchers were about to become heaven's traitors. And so they fell, not cast out, but choosing to fall. 200 stars streaking across the ancient sky. The people below saw the sky burning. They closed their doors. They held their children, but doors would not keep out what was coming. Her name was Arissa. She was 18 years old. She had never seen an angel. She had never known fear. That was about to change. A shadow fell across her. Impossible. Nothing stood between her and the sun. But when she looked up, she saw a being of terrible beauty descending toward her.
Do not be afraid.
7 feet tall, skin holding starlight, wings of impossible colors. And his voice, gentle but wrong, spoke words that offered no comfort. Do not be afraid. She was afraid. She was right to be. Across the world, 200 women would see that same shadow fall. And humanity would never be the same. 9 months later, the children came. But they were not human children. They were something else. They grew fast, too fast. At 5 years old, they stood as tall as grown men. At 10, they towered over their mothers. At first, humanity celebrated them. They were warriors, builders, kings, the mighty men of old, the men of renown. They built cities that touched the clouds. They conquered every enemy, but their hunger grew faster than their fame. They devoured all the produce of the earth, every herd, every harvest. When the animals were gone, they looked at humanity with new eyes. And then they turned to humanity itself. The creatures that were meant to protect began to devour. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and afterward, mighty men of old, men of renown. And humanity's nightmare had only just begun. While other watchers took wives, Azazel craved something different. He wanted disciples, and he had knowledge that humanity was never meant to possess. He taught them to forge swords and knives and shields and breastplates. He showed them how to pull metal from stone, how to shape bronze and iron into instruments of death. But weapons were only the beginning. He taught them cosmetics and vanity. He taught them sorcery and enchantments. He opened doors that God had sealed shut. The other watchers followed Azazel's example. Barakijal taught the reading of stars. Kokabel taught root cutting for mind control. Amaros taught how to break divine enchantments. Within 3 generations, the earth was transformed. Where shepherds once tended flocks, armies now marched. Where prayers once rose to heaven, smoke now rose from altars dedicated to beings that were not God. And Azazel looked upon what he had made. The world was learning war. The world was forgetting God. For the fallen watcher, everything was going according to plan. The knowledge of angels, the hunger of giants, the rebellion of humanity. These 3 corruptions had merged into something heaven could no longer ignore. But in all this darkness, there was one house the corruption had not touched. One family that still remembered the old ways. One line that traced back to Seth, to Adam, to the very breath of God. Methuselah was nearly 1,000 years old. He remembered things no one else alive had seen, and his grandson Noah was the only one who still wanted to listen.
Listen, Noah. The world is not what it seems.
I am listening, grandfather.
Then you will see. I see it now, the sacred grove. The El Tardas of Tas. Guard it well.
The ancient patriarch spoke of his father, Enoch, the prophet who had walked with God and was taken before death could claim him. But before he went, he told me things. Young Noah leaned forward, hungry for truth, in a world drowning in lies. What things, grandfather? What did the prophet see?
Listen closely, Noah. The time has come to share the sacred truth for ages.
Methuselah's voice dropped to a whisper, carrying the weight of centuries that the watchers would be bound, their children destroyed, the earth cleansed. All but one family. Which family?
Which family?
Noah asked. But Methuselah didn't answer. The silence spoke louder than words. And Noah, unlike his peers, began to understand why he had never felt like he belonged to this corrupted world. Noah, unlike his generation, refused to take a corrupted wife. He waited, he prayed, and he watched the darkness deepen, knowing somehow that light was coming. Violence filled the earth. Every thought of humanity's heart was evil, only evil, continually. All flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. The innocent had become guilty. The guilty had become monsters. And the monsters had become gods. The Nephilim made war on everything that breathed. There was no army that could resist them, no wall that could hold them, no prayer that seemed to reach heaven. Innocence had no place in this world anymore. Mercy was a memory. Hope was a word no one spoke. And in heaven, the Creator looked upon what had become of his creation. The world he had called very good had become very evil. And for the first time since the beginning, he regretted, not because he had made a mistake, but because his children had broken his heart. In the city of Enoch, named mockingly after Cain's firstborn, the greatest of the Nephilim had gathered. They ruled the earth, but something had begun to trouble their dreams. Ohia, son of Semjaza, stood tallest among them. His shoulders could block the sun. His sword had slain 1,000 enemies. But tonight, even he was afraid. The giant spoke to his gathered brothers, fear breaking through his voice of thunder.
This threat we face is beyond anything we have seen. Even I feel a fear I cannot hide. The Most High sees all we have done. Our fathers know it. Now they fear the reckoning.
His brother Haya confirmed their worst fears. The Most High sees all we have done. Our fathers know it. Now they fear the reckoning. Mahaweh leaped to his feet, cracking the stone table with his fist, roaring defiance he did not fully believe.
Let him come! We have conquered every enemy! We have crushed every army! What power in heaven or earth can stand against us?
But Ohia silenced him with darker news.
Our father Semjaza dreamed of a tablet immersed in water. The signs are clear. Mahaweh, you will lead the vanguard.
The council fell silent. For the first time in their existence, the Nephilim faced something they could not kill. But Oya had one desperate idea. Oya spoke with desperate hope, grasping at any chance of survival. There is one who might interpret
these visions. Enoch, they sake into paradise. He might head our case.
Enoch, the prophet who walked between heaven and earth. They say he was taken to paradise, but still lives. He might yet plead our case. It was a desperate plan. Why would the prophet of the Most High help the children of rebels? But desperate creatures do desperate things, and Mahaway was the fastest flyer among them. Oya rose to his full terrifying height and commanded, "Mahaway, you are the swiftest among us. You will fly to the ends of the earth. You will find Enoch in paradise. And you will return with answers, or do not return at all."
I will find the prophet. I will bring his words back to you, whatever those words may be.
Mahaway's wings were like nothing on earth, part eagle, part something older than eagles. He was the swiftest creature in existence. He would need to be. And so Mahaway flew toward the ends of the earth, toward the garden where prophets walked with God. Behind him, the Nephilim waited for answers they feared to hear. 1,000 miles west, another figure watched the darkness. Noah, son of Lamech, grandson of Methuselah, 500 years old, the last righteous man in a world that had forgotten what righteousness meant. He remembered when there were other righteous men. His grandfather, Methuselah, a few scattered faithful. Year by year, they had died or corrupted. Now, Noah stood alone. Below him, the Nephilim celebrated their power. But the screams of the innocent had stopped, not because the violence ended, but because there were no innocent left to scream. Noah watched, heartbroken. He had prayed for years beyond counting. He had begged heaven to intervene. And on this day, this ordinary, terrible day, heaven finally answered. The sky split open, not with lightning, but with eternity. And a voice spoke that had not been heard on earth since the garden was sealed. For 500 years, Noah had prayed into silence. Now heaven had torn itself open, and silence was about to end. The voice came from everywhere at once, a sound that was not merely heard but felt in the marrow of bones, in the depths of the soul. It spoke his name, just his name, and that was enough to undo him.
Noah.
His name, spoken by the voice that named the stars. Noah had never felt more terrified. He had never felt more loved. The voice continued, each word carrying the weight of divine authority, declaring that the end of all flesh had come before him, that the
Noah, I have seen the wickedness of man. I will bring a flood of waters upon the earth. Behold the corruption I see. Rivers of blood, rivers of violence. But I see all of them, all flesh.
Noah collapsed into the dirt, shoulders heaving with sobs. The whole world was going to die. Everyone he had ever known, every corrupted soul he had prayed for, gone. But then, the light shifted. Warmer. Something new was coming. Within the judgment, there was a door. God commanded Noah to make an ark of gopher wood.
Noah,
300 cubits
build an
long,
ark of the
50
gopher
cubits
wolf.
wide, 30 cubits high. The vision expanded, revealing impossible details. 3 decks, rooms within, pitch coating inside and out, a single window near the top, 1 door in the side. Noah's mind reeled. This vessel was larger than anything ever conceived. Noah's mind raced with impossibilities. Lord, I have no sons. I have no wife. Am I to face this alone? And the answer came with warmth that pierced the terror. A vision of 8 figures entering the ark.
But I will establish my covenant with you. You shall come into the ark.
Noah, a wife, 3 sons, 3 daughters-in-law. The voice spoke the promise that would sustain him through everything, that God would establish his covenant with Noah, that he would come into the ark with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him.
Covenant. What is a covenant?
It was God binding himself. It was the Creator saying, "Though the world burns, I will keep my word." The light intensified as the weight of the promise settled upon Noah. God declared that through Noah he would preserve the seed of Adam, that through Noah the world would begin again. This was his covenant, and he would not break it. But then the divine light began to recede. The tear in the sky slowly healed. Noah felt the presence withdrawing and cried out his desperate final question.
How long? How long do I have to build the ark? How long will the waters come?
There was no answer. The sky healed. The presence faded. And Noah was left on a hilltop with an impossible task, an unbreakable promise, and a question that heaven chose not to answer. Noah had waited 500 years for God to speak. Now he had his answer, and it was more terrible and more wonderful than anything he had imagined. And Noah rose. He turned his back on the world that was dying, and he faced the forest where the first tree was waiting. Methuselah was waiting. Of course he was waiting. He had known this day would come before Noah was born.
It is beginning. What my father foretold before he was taken, it is finally beginning. The giant's fathers dream of a tablet with names washed away. All but 3 names, a grandson.
When do I begin? There's so much. I don't even know where to start.
Tomorrow, at first light. It's all right, son. I'm here.
I don't want you to go.
I'll always be with you. And Noah, find a wife, a pure wife. Your sons will need mothers untainted by watcher blood. The future depends on it.
Next dawn found Noah in the forest. Before him stood a tree that had grown for 1,000 years. Behind him lay a world that had 120 years left to live. Between them was an axe. The axe rose. The axe fell. The first tree shuddered. 1,000 miles east, Mahaweh soared above the clouds. His wings, part eagle, part something older than eagles, had not rested in 3 days. He flew on star, paths his father Barakijal had mapped, toward the garden at the edge of the world. Below him, the world was a tapestry of corruption, burning cities, rivers running red, herds extinct, forests devoured. This was what the Nephilim had made of God's creation. An unbidden thought surfaced in his mind.
What have we done?
He pushed harder, flying faster. He didn't want to think. Thinking led to questions he couldn't answer. And then, as the sun set on the 3rd day, he saw it. The garden was everything the old stories described, and more. Mountains touching heaven, waters flowing pure as light, trees bearing gold and silver fruit. This was what earth had been before the fall. And at the garden's heart walked a man who had never known death. Enoch, the prophet who walked with God and was taken. He looked up at the descending giant. He had been expecting him. Mahaweh landed in paradise and felt for the first time how wrong he was. This place was holy. He was not. The very ground seemed to recoil from what he carried in his blood. Enoch approached without fear, small against the giant's towering form, yet somehow making the monster step backward.
Mahaweh, son of Barakijal, I have been expecting you.
Prophet of the Most High, our fathers dream of judgment. We have brought their visions to you. Please interpret them. Tell us there is hope.
Enoch took the tablet in hands that had touched creation's fabric. He studied the symbols, and in his ancient eyes, pity formed. He knew what he must say. He had known for centuries. Enoch looked up from the tablet. His eyes met Mahaweh's, a long moment of silence.
You came seeking hope, son of the Watchers. I wish I could give it to you.
The Watchers who abandon their proper dwelling in heaven shall be bound in chains of darkness. They slaughter each other, every last one of us. None shall survive. None.
And the earth? What of the earth? What of the humans? Surely some will...
The earth shall be cleansed by water.
Every mountain covered, every tower fallen, every creature that breathes air upon the land shall die.
Mahawe's heart, which had never known fear, shattered. For the first time, a Nephilim wept. For the first time, a monster knew despair. Mahawe grasped at one last hope. There must be a way. There must be. But Enoch's gentle headshake destroyed even that. There is no way. The decree has been sealed in heaven. Even now, the angels of destruction have been assigned. Enoch knelt beside the broken giant, bringing himself to eye level, a gesture of unexpected compassion for this doomed creature. But there is one who has found grace, one who will survive.
Noah. He alone is favor in the eyes of the Lorders. But even now he sharpens his axe for the first cut of gopher wood. The three names on the tablet, they are Noah and his sons not yet born.
Mahawe understood now. The Nephilim would die, all of them, but humanity, a cleansed, purified humanity, would continue. And perhaps that was not entirely unjust.
How long? How long before the waters come? 120 years.
120 years. Time enough to build an ark. Time enough for every soul on earth to hear the warning. Enoch explained the mercy hidden within the judgment. Time enough for every soul on earth to hear the warning and repent. Because the Almighty is merciful, even in judgment.
Will any repent? They will not. They cannot. That's gone too deep. But the Chachan has gone too in. When you return to your brothers, do not tell them about Noah. Do not tell them about the ark. Why? Why keep it secret? Because unless and until I send this in escape, they could not share. You asked me to betray my own kind. I ask you to show more mercy than your fathers ever did. I must lie, to save them all. I will carry your message. I will omit what you have asked. The ark will remain secret. Your father will be among the first saying goodbye. And go. Mahawe, your father is dying. I have time to say goodbye. That is a gift. I will go to him.
Mahawe had come seeking hope for his race. He was leaving with their doom and a chance to say goodbye to his father. It was more than he deserved. It was mercy. The giant launched into the darkening sky. He carried doom in his heart and a secret in his silence. Behind him, the prophet watched until the speck vanished into the eastern dark, and Enoch was alone again, in paradise, but alone, knowing everything that would come.
120 years, may it be enough.
But not all watchers had surrendered to their fate. On Azazel's mountain, forges burned brighter than ever. The keeper of forbidden knowledge was not preparing for death. He was preparing for war. Noah had no sons, no helpers, no blueprint beyond what burned in his memory from God's own voice. But he had something stronger than any of these. He had a promise that could not be broken. The giants would soon receive Mahawe's report, and their rage would shake the mountains. The watchers would be bound, dragged to chains they would wear for millennia. And on an unsuspecting earth, the countdown continued. 120 years. One man against a world. One promise that could not be broken. And one question that only time would answer. What happens when immortals face their extinction? What secrets still hide within the Book of Giants? And what price will Noah pay for being the only righteous man? In a world that wants nothing more than to stay corrupt, the answers await. In Part 2, The Ark of Bones.